Hey everybody, this is PD from the Spinner Rack, and today I'm going to do a video on the classic X-Men. Right? This was a series that started in 1987. It started with covers by Arthur Adams, had some interior stuff by John Bolton, reprinted material from Dave Cockrum and Lean Wynn and Chris Claremont, and they would start to reprint the X-Men from giant size to the present day, right? So in the past, Marvel had done Amazing Heroes, and they were reprinting and repackaging the new X-Men, the original X-Men, while the new X-Men were getting all this success. And I was buying it. My plan was to continue buying that series until we got to the present day. It would have new covers with some of the old material, and sometimes the old covers, just like the Fantastic Reprint series or Marvel Tales. That would be an easier one to say. But as that went away, those reprint titles went away, we would have, it would be rare to see reprints for a little while. But then Marvel and DC started doing these Baxter things. With the Baxter comic books, they started to release these Baxter editions. This one being the X-Men one, right? So to give you an overview, this is kind of what the reprints, they wouldn't, sometimes they would have a new cover. So this would be a new cover, right? So at this point, the new X-Men are a success. So you can kind of tell that the way they're selling it to you, and I think the original cover had the new X-Men. I guess the original cover, let's show that, right? So the original cover here is in black and white. Had the originals here, and the new X-Men busting out with Cyclops in the background of these new X-Men, right? So I think when I was initially thinking about this, I was talking in the sense that the new X-Men were now the new hotness, so they are in front, but that's the way it was in the original cover. So it's just kind of expanded their escape from Krakoa, right? So this is a great cover. The original X-Men are smaller in the background, even Cyclops. And then we have a special story here added. So we had this great reprint. It also has this, it's a pinup, but this was probably initial corner box. This thing right here. This is probably the corner box for when when Dave Cockrum returned to the X-Men, but they repositioned it. Cyclops is in front since he's the leader, and then the new X-Men are behind him, right? So we got this great reprint, right? And it has everything as we saw before. I think Phoenix the Untold Story, they had redone dialogue, mock-up stuff, ideas that they initially had that was changed. And if you hadn't seen any of those things, Marvel Tales, World's Greatest Comic Books, and these Baxter editions were great. So the idea of classic X-Men is brilliant, right? But it's also in the conceit to saying, hey, we don't have to reprint the original X-Men stuff because we know that's bad, right? But initially they were doing it, but then they stopped, right? And I was hoping to get probably all of them because I was a big fan of the X-Men. But here we have them, glorious, great art. The characters created by Dave Cockrum, Roy here, front and centered. We have obviously Colossus, Storm. We have Thunderbird and Nightcrawler. Wolverine wasn't created by him, but he was his face was designed by him. And him and Chris Claremont had decided that the claws are real. He didn't have a skeleton, but his claws were actually biological adamantium, right? And Dave Cockrum showed he could do everything. He could do the originals. He could do the new. There's basically nothing he couldn't do during these periods, right? Only thing he couldn't do is maintain a monthly schedule, right? So but this is not about this special edition. But I want to show you what we would get, and then the idea of what we got as far as a backup story, right? And ending on kind of a light note. What we're going to do with 13 X-Men, right? So we have a backup story, which is a day in the life, but Marvel would call it a day like any other, right? So we have her in a danger room. She messes up in her gymnastics thing. We get to see how Kitty's powers work, being able to float on air. And then she see her create new different setups, one for being able to do like the holodeck in Star Trek before Star Trek was doing it, right? So then they go through the different rooms. We have Professor X room with Cerebro in the background, just in case a mutant comes out of nowhere. We have Storm's Airy, it has her rooftop with her plants. You have Jean Grey's room that hasn't been changed. Now you have to also imagine that Jean Grey left before she died 2 times. So I'm not sure if they would have kept her room untouched, right? But it's a poignant thing to kind of show you Jean's room and then Cyclops' room with a picture of Jean. We have Wolverine's room with Cal Danvers and Mariko with a lot of Japanese stuff in it to kind of hint. And then we have Nightcrawler's thing. He has a lot more spacious room so he can do his acrobatics. And he has a pterodactyl from the Savage Land. We have Colossus' room where he's painting. And also we hint the relationship between Kitty and Cyclops. And Ilyana asks, hey, are you and my brother an item? And he said, give me a break. He's 19. And he says, so what? You're 14. So she kind of moves on to it. There's a looming figure. And then we get to see where the Blackbird is and some of the other ships they have. And then we have, this is classic Marvel. Getting to see them blow dry their hair. I don't think Cockrum had done that in the Legion, but that is these human moments. It's a humanly big brush, but it's giving you the regular life type of thing. And as they see some sort of intruder, they go down and they find out it's actually, and these are all the characters, most of the characters Dave Cockrum created with Havoc and Polaris. Those are the 2 characters of the original not the original, but of the early team that Cockrum liked, and the New Mutants are in there too, right? Say happy birthday, Kitty, and she goes for a kiss from Colossus, even though she said there wasn't an item. This is my best guy, and so I thought that's what we'd be getting in the classic X-Men. Now, this period, Chris Claremont was, I guess we should keep this here because that other issue is a jump, right? So Chris Claremont is trying to figure out the new artists for the regular title, right? Because this is 87, around the time of the massacre. So the X-Men going through a shakeup. John Romita Jr. is going to Starbrand, and they need a regular artist. So, who is it? Rob Liefeld talked about Chris Claremont courting artists, and he was already working with, who I showed you, John Bolton on, I think it's Murata Srijagan, and there was another, like First Night that he was working on with John Bolton, and Arthur Adams, who was doing the X-Men annuals. So, and they're 2 artists that weren't necessarily monthly guys, but they were mainstays on this classic X-Men title. Arthur Adams would do the covers and the interior inserts. John Bolton would do the extra pages and the back page, right? So at the same time, feels like these 2 guys were kind of Chris Claremont's first choice to do the regular title, but for whatever reason, whether their schedule, their ability to do monthly, the X-Men didn't have a regular artist. And Mark Silvestri, who actually was going to do the New Mutants, he saw that the X-Men didn't have an artist, and he turned to Ann Nocenti and said, "Can I do the X-Men?" And she was kind of like not prepared to give the X-Men to him, but he'd already done X-Men versus the Avengers, so he's kind of like, she said yes to it. And they say Chris Claremont wasn't happy because it was a choice. Possibly he wanted either Barry Windsor Smith, Alan Davis, who turned it down. Obviously, I already said Arthur Adams and John Bolton. Maybe Brett Belvins, but Brett Belvins then went to, where did he go to? He went to the New Mutants, and also Steve Root said he turned it down. So ultimately, this might be, this series, even though I struggle with it, might be one of Chris Claremont's favorites to work on, so let's kind of go through it, right? So imagine you're in 87, you're a fan of Arthur Adams, and you see a cover, Classic X-Men. You're just like, wow. Oh my goodness, this is what I waited for. Finally, I probably saw a blurb about this. Maybe, maybe not, who knows. But with that said, then you open it up. Now, this cover was done from a sketch from Tom Palmer. If you look at it, look at the sketch, people felt that, well, a lot of people went to credit it as a John Romita sketch, but Tom Morgan recently said online that it was his sketch, and he told Arthur Adams, and Arthur Adams thought it was John Romita, and Arthur Adams told Tom Morgan that I got a lot of mileage out of that sketch, so he redid this cover a whole lot. So this is a classic cover, of course. A lot of covers Marvel did were done from sketches, so I can't tell you what is a sketch and what's not from these covers, right? Then we had this insert. Now, Rob Liefeld would use this layout for the New Mutants, and that's when I already knew, when I saw that thing before he started drawing it, I knew his New Mutants was going to be a hit. I was like, this is cool. It's like running into, you being a fan of Neil Adams, and you see Byrne's work, and you say, this guy is going to be the next guy, right? Because Byrne was a clone of Neil Adams, so you're like, oh, if this guy's a clone of Arthur Adams, I wonder what he'll become. But then when I opened up this portion, I found John Bolton's work a little jarring for me. So it's kind of like, and it would take a while. I don't think I had the issue where, I haven't pulled out the issue where I kind of said he's good, but you'll see signs of it as we go along. Not really in this issue, but it was kind of jarring for me. And then the story was also jarring because I'd already seen this issue, so I kind of knew what happened. But then he tells what happens on the first night, right? And then there's montages of what happened, running through it pretty quickly. I didn't like any of this stuff, except you could see signs here. It's like, oh, why isn't he drawing like that throughout the book, right? But at the same time, it's quality stuff, right? I could tell it now, but at the time, I was really bugged by this. And then I don't always like jam issues. They don't really work for me with multiple artists, but you have this great Cockrum art, and on newsprint, so they do the whole him gathering the new X-Men, and then it would go to a montage of what happened, and then quickly taken out. And this right here is the key to the story, which is just basically the day in the life type of stuff. Now, I showed you an old school kind of one of that, but here Xavier will be going through his papers, of course, because he's he's their leader, and he's going through their mind, and he's like not gonna do that. He also sees Jean and Cyclops. Now this scene here is really kind of trumped together, right? It's kind of just a setup to get Jean to go alone. Mind you, he didn't know if Jean was alive or dead, and he goes to save her, but now he has to do all this paperwork, which he could just transfer all the information to Professor Xavier through the mind and go about his business. But the points where Cyclops didn't go out was because of his optic blast. And he was afraid that he might hurt somebody, right? And if you had glasses on, people see what you're on 24, people usually grab at the glasses, which they've done many a time. So that's why he would stay in, not this, hey, I gotta do this paperwork, right? And he's going to do all this stuff to figure things out, but he's neglecting Jean, right? So this is going to be the setup of a lot of this Jean stuff, is his neglect. And Iceman comes in, and he's just being a total jerk to him. Now, he's a hothead. He's not a total jerk, right? He's been a total jerk, and obviously a lot of the X-Men writers feel that Iceman is the weakest. And we see Jean out here, and I couldn't, for my not understanding what's going on in the story, why the characterization, why they're acting like this, and why the original X-Men are coming up short. We see Jean out here, and Wolverine sneaks up on her, and that's red flag number one, right? But then he's putting the moves on her. But at the same time, he's saying her senses are saying the feelings are mutual. And I was like, well, no, I know Wolverine likes Jean, but not the other way around. Not in the sense that she's attracted to him. And then also, having the two characters at the same eye line is cheating. He's almost kneeling down towards Jean, right? He's taller than Jean. Jean's taller than him, and he's looking like he's taller. So it's one of those things where it's just like, what is going on in this story, right? And since I'm a fan of Angel, I did like the fact that he was flirting with Storm, but then he sees Jean with Wolverine, and he comes in and attacks, and this is supposed to build up the hatred between Angel and Wolverine. But Angel's problem with Wolverine is that he has the claws and he has no problem using it. And Angel was right that he is a homicidal maniac. Wolverine knows he's a homicidal maniac, but they try to put it to he's being overprotective of Jean, right? But at the same time, he was being a little aggressive to her, right? But at the same time, why is Angel standing here, right? Why don't he get up here and get out of here? He's just standing here waiting to get cut up by Wolverine, not using any speed. And then he's like, look, this guy's crazy. Well, and they, hey, Angel just sprung the first blow, but he's being extra aggressive. And then now Wolverine's the wounded puppy. It's a great face shot, but at the same time, it was kind of like, ugh. And Jean comes to say her second goodbye to Professor Xavier, right? And he's like, uh-oh, she's afraid of yielding to Wolverine? Like, where did this come from, right? And he said, I love Scott with all my heart, but also can't deny the attraction between me and Wolverine. And I was like, what? The longer we are together, the more I'm afraid of yielding. That's only part of what I feel, right? And then she starts, like she left before, right? So we're making too much of a big deal out of this. When she left, Professor Xavier was gracious and like okay with her leaving. It wasn't a big deal, but they made a big deal of it. So I wasn't kind of with that at all. And then the back cover, the height advantage of Jean is barely there. It should be a little bit smaller, but you know, for dramatic effect and the fact that she can't control herself around Wolverine, really went. There's a first 180, first retcon where I was like, that's not, because I was buying the issues. I knew it was Wolverine in love with Jean, right? And then we have here another nice insert, nice new cover, right? So we had that issue, right? And maybe they thought about, now they already decided they were leaving in this next issue, right? Well, this is supposed to be when they get back, right? So they already say that they're leaving, right? And so we had that poignant moment, but at the same time, it doesn't fit in with this story, right? When they talk about it, Xavier's not ready for them to leave. It's a little stand moment where he's a little more dramatic than it normally should be, right? And like some of the art changes here in that face, you can see it. And as it goes along, you'll see some art stuff. I'm not sure if the film they had for this was gone or whatever they had. And here is a redrawn page, and the artist isn't credited here, right? This is a new page added to add some more stuff. This one is the original, but the art looks like it's changed a little bit, right? So there's some redrawn here, I guess, for publication, right? I think this is a new page. This is another new page introducing Moira. She wasn't introduced to a few issues later, right? Because she gets called out. So this is setting up Muir Island, right? And setting up that she has some stuff set up and she has to go back and help Xavier. And so that's about it for this. Let's move on to the next story. First Friends, right? So we'd have these day in the life type stories, right? Where you see Storm run into Jean, and this is how they became friends. And she would change into something more comfortable and change into nothing. So, nope, you got to stay in clothes. And I still kind of wasn't with this art, but this shot here kind of was like, oh, I could see some stuff here, but it's still, and this story isn't necessarily, well, I guess Jean's purse gets stolen. Jean asks Storm to follow her, and the kid goes into the, what's that thing? Into the train station, and then Jean using her mental powers. At the same time she catches a kid, she gets caught with all these thoughts. And for some reason, she's gone through this before, but she's in a bad place. She comes back up, and Storm's saying, nope, she can't explain that she's afraid of closed spaces. And they don't tell the X-Men. So they introduce that she has an issue with closed spaces. She's claustrophobic. But at the same time, you know, it's just what the classic X-Men introduce elements, but it's a retcon, but no one tells anyone this stuff. And then we have this nice looming shot of what's the name of Thunderbird? Now Thunderbird is one of, like, some of these look like they were redrawn, or maybe the page was like this over here. But some of the, I can't, this isn't new, but right here, it's been reorganized, right? With some new pages, with new panels, right? And stuff that seemingly had to be redrawn here to clean up like this. And there'd be other odd things. The Wolverine losing to Catman. Right here, got punched by Catman. He's like, oh, so you'd have to, like, that's the whole adamantium skeleton is retconned. So there's many retcons that work. But as you see, once you start retconning, just like tattoos or plastic surgery, you just can't stop, right? So you have this bit where the X-Men are trying to get Thunderbird to get off the plane, right? Xavier's telling him to stop. We have, they're both trying to save Thunderbird. He won't stop. It crashes, explodes. Xavier experiences the death in his mind. We have Banshee in mourning. All this high drama. This was supposed to, hook into the X-Men, the death of a character to kind of draw the kids in. It didn't necessarily do it, but the energy of the book is here. Jean shows back up, so you can see as this is going along, Chris Claremont is starting to enjoy having Jean back because at the same time doing the Phoenix stuff, he didn't really get to fully utilize the real Jean. So he's getting to play with her a lot in here. But he's not playing with Cyclops at all, or the original X-Men or anything like that. But these stories would key into not giving you more bits of the past. And look at this great shot of Storm here. So that outfit is really nice. And we get to see some of the characters in their interactions with James Proudstar. And some of the fights and him having a struggle to fit in. But then at the same time, we have his brother, his younger brother looking on. And his brother once says vengeance, but his vengeance should be against Count Nefaria. But of course, the white man took him out of his seclusion, so he had to blame Xavier and Banshee, who both tried to save him. So kind of that backwards type of writing. But those elements would work this way. I think that worked its way into the anniversary issue of 193, right? Another great interior shot there. And this would be the fights between Nightcrawler and Wolverine. This would suggest their friendship and how they connected. And I don't think Wolverine actually caught Nightcrawler in the original series, but here he's able to catch him, and he doesn't use his claws. And they have this moment with the image inducer, where Nightcrawler wants to be himself, and Wolverine dares him not to use the image inducer, right? When he goes out, he gets treated okay. And then he has some people that give him frowns, but some people like him, right? And then at the same time, he runs into this guy. Then Wolverine decides, no, Nightcrawler could take care of himself, but you gotta add Wolverine here, and then Nightcrawler's there to calm down Wolverine, and then they teleport out of there. And they're friends for life. He doesn't need the image inducer anymore, right? Wrong! Sound like Cal now, right? So we established that in this issue, he doesn't need the image inducer, right? So we go into this issue that has the reprint, right? And all this great Dave Cockrum pages, and Mora, that became the maid, even though she's a geneticist. Another redone page, new and added page to this. Since originally the stories were 17 pages, but they added way more than 17 pages. I went to get it up to 32. They added pages to the regular story and to the backups. So, and here we have Nightcrawler using the image inducer. Here he is again. Here's him changing back into Nightcrawler. So doing a story this early on about, I guess when Byrne was doing it, it should have came out around issue 15, because there's an issue of Iron Fist 15 where Nightcrawler gives up the image inducer. So it would work perfectly around the time when Byrne just got there. So, did I get to the backup story in this? Oh, so here, they would start to reuse mutant plots here, right? So we have another day in the life type of thing. Prisons of the Heart is a Colossus love story. He saves this girl who's knocked out, and in taking care of her, it turns into a love story. And they go out to, looks like Lincoln Center, Lincoln Center, for some show, right? This better not be the Falcon and the what's the name. But there's a show going on, and they're falling in love. The people that were after her come back again. And Colossus changes into Colossus. She sees him and she runs off, right? And he tears up the picture, and poignant story, but it's the Iceman story. Iceman protects his girlfriend. She sees the power and runs, right? So that would be the most reused mutant plot ever, right? So you want to do something slightly different, at least in my opinion, but we have the Sentinel story, a nice shot of Cyclops and Jean. This is probably the image, still using the image inducer. Wolverine's not saying, hey, bub, why are you still using the image inducer? Stan and Jack have a show up, redrawn by Marie Severin. And I always struggle with this issue, because each mutant can take out a Sentinel by themselves. So we see this page is new page. And so they're adding pages, and this here on the date. Sees the girl that he wants. So they're trying to really work in all the stuff they added already, and they're trying to drag in the Hellfire Club early on, right? So, and then here's another Jean story, right? So Jean, actually, her reason for leaving, because she was going to become Ms. Marvel, and that's why she was getting the new costumes. And here, she's getting ready. It's a silent story outside of the sound effect. And then they have this thing on the wall which describes mutants for some strange reason. Obviously, you're going to have letters in here to establish why Misty isn't there. And, of course, she has some Cyclops clothes around the house. So she dances with Cyclops because, of course, he's never present. And then we have a setup for why she decided to name herself the Phoenix, because she has this poster, the Phoenix, on the carpet, right? She's trying to decide what outfit to wear on, to put on. But that Cyclops shows up. They're still in love, but then the Sentinels attack, something hits her room, the painting falls off, and then also this bit of the Phoenix and the carpet. So it's there's the Phoenix and the carpet. That's the title of it. It's crazy, right? So I think I'm trying to go till 12, issue 12. I'm missing one here. I don't have 11, but this is similar to a Dave Cockrum picture, but this picture here is the one of Storm in space. Now, I'm not too much of a fan of the X-Men in space, because a lot of the X-Men aren't really space-worthy, and people always joke about the X-Men Fantastic Four not being space-worthy. So we have these new pages just don't work, right? And I'm gonna eat my words at some point, right? All these set up. And yeah, this one's another bad one. And this is a story dealing with the Hellfire Club and how Shaw became the next guy, right? And this is actually this is one of my favorites of the covers, especially having the original X-Men in here. And then we have this shot here, which is a redo of the other one. I think this the New Mutants one matches this one a little more than the other one, right? So let's just say that. And we have this classic issue. I think they didn't find any. Did they find time to redraw stuff? And I think some of the things that would be soft here in the reprinting, they would re-ink. But this time they didn't do much of that, right? They kind of kept the book as is, of just Cockrum's art so far. Oh, nope, we added one. We added one shot here, right? And a bad shot of Cyclops. Added another page here. And this shot here, right? And here, one of the things, I know people have pointed out that Chris Claremont has protested bringing Jean back, but he rewrote Fantastic Four 286, and he retold the story of Jean, how she survived the shuttle in this story, where she was dying from the radiation, right? She doesn't call out to Wolverine. She calls out to Cyclops, but Wolverine is kind of her boy toy. That's who she wants to physically be with, and Cyclops is the guy she's in love with, right? And she's going to do everything to save Scott, even though physically she's more attracted to Wolverine. And then the Phoenix entity comes. And now the Phoenix entity is a benevolent entity, which is not what it was before. It was the Chaos Bringer, Ravager of Worlds, right? And then she says her new phrases and that sort of thing. But there's a classic line that she's a child of light and darkness. But the light and darkness thing came from the Lords of Light and Darkness, right? They were characters created by Bill Mantlo. So the being reused for the Phoenix is kind of a little much for me. This is the really great cover. I mean, the Cockrum cover was very classic, so getting it at a different angle was even better, right? And this has a lot of redone pages. Kind of this page here. Some of this here. All this stuff is redone. And here we have Wolverine with a bouquet of flowers. But if he had to show feelings, he don't have the heart to. So he's just there like everybody else, right? So, and also in the cartoon where Jean was pregnant and Cyclops was more important, struggling with Cyclops was struggling with the X-Men stuff. Here, he realized that Jean's more important, right? So if it was a case of Jean being pregnant, he wouldn't really be doing X-Men stuff. He'd be taking care of Jean, right? And this would lead to one of the first arguments that we saw on camera. Oh, this is a poignant Nightcrawler story where Nightcrawler runs into a woman who's struggling with cancer. It gets a little mysticism a little bit later, but it's connected to the being at the hospital, and he kind of brings a smile to the woman's face. So that one isn't necessarily a retcon, but it's kind of, I don't know how to describe it. Kind of to add some drama to it, he added some mysticism to the story. Now, I bought this original comic here, the original version of it, and Terry Austin inks the cover. Right? And Adams does this by himself. I was like, what the hell's going on with Storm? Why is she crying in the corner? And listen, she's saying she's so scared. She's thinking of her mother. She can't muster up the strength to help the X-Men. And they don't play with the claustrophobia that much. But she's just a total waste. And then we have these. Now, I've complained about the new pages and new art. But we have John Romita Jr. here. So it's like, oh, wow. So I'm still not kind of with it. They add in. Now, she was supposed to be a, not someone who had an experience. So this is one of the, I guess this is this the, no, so this is the first retcon, right? That Storm initially was from Africa, had no knowledge of anything besides where she was at in Kenya. And we've had this story of, this was added way before Classic X-Men, but they just expanded on it, where she loses her parents, she winds up in Cairo, she learns how to become a thief, and she survives. We get a later story where she runs into the Black Panther. So she done all that, she's experienced life as a person, and there's no reason for her to think of herself as a goddess, right? So this is a really amazing page by John Romita. He does the best babes in the business, right? And one of these odd pages where Jean says she died and brought herself back to life, right? And then Cyclops is like, he's not joined to save the X-Men. He's going to stay with Jean. And of course, they had this stand moment where they had this big argument. But Professor sees Lalandra, and they expand on that moment, right? Somehow, the Juggernaut got hurt by the fire. And here's another retcon. Originally, he was totally invisible, and then they made him virtually invisible, right? That's another great page. And then we have the tag you're it. So this was to be established that who was it? This was established that Sabretooth would come and attack Wolverine from time to time, right? And Marauder She-Wolf, that's the title that Claremont and John Bolton had done before. And I think initially the idea was, I think this is the first time they did it, that, or maybe it was second, but they would do it again, and Claremont would do it again in Wolverine number 10. But Bernie Claremont had a storyline where Sabretooth would kill Mariko, and the X-Men and Wolverine would track him, hunt him down, and kill him. So it wouldn't be an ongoing Joker type thing. Wolverine would literally kill Sabretooth. And he got the okay when they were thinking of the idea from Shooter to do it, right? It would lead to a bit of losing Mariko. But we see this element where he kills this woman and Wolverine going after him, but he can't find him. And then he gets attacked by, seemingly killed, his throat cut and tossed down, but he survives, right? So we get into the tail end, I think. I think my last two I'm going to do coming up. What did I do here? I did the tag you're it. So my last one is going to be this Magneto one, right? So as I said, I showed you the first retcon with Storm. Oh, that's my fault, excuse me. I showed you the first retcon with Storm. And this is some really amazing art, right? But they added some pages of how they survived. I think by Dave Cockrum. And all this is 3 pages added. And then we see Muir Island, her laboratory. And then they're like, why did she become a housekeeper? So here we go. I guess it's a reveal, but it's so drastic. It's trying to explain how she knows how to shoot an M16, but and it's also another classic mystery of Magneto, right? And Cockrum nailed Magneto just like everyone, but it leads to the backup story. And oh yeah, that's the other thing I want to say is that the new X-Men were nowhere ready to deal with Magneto. So Cyclops got them out of there, and we get this story from the past. A Fire in the Night, right? And we have Magneto in Paris. And he has these nightmares of being in Auschwitz, right? And that he fought back and took his girl, Magda, and they escaped, right? And he said he will protect her forever, right? And they escaped, and this is not... Bill Mantlo had done a version of this. Actually, in the Avengers, I think it's like 186, they show you that Magda ran away from her husband who had gained power and went mad, right? And then that was retconned by Bill Mantlo. No, it was retconned by Chris Claremont saying that he was in Auschwitz and he lost his daughter, and that's why he couldn't kill Kitty. So he's sitting there all upset, and the X-Men and him have a stalemate. They don't do anything to Magneto. Magneto stops his attack on the planet, and the X-Men kind of move on. And they stop fighting Magneto. But then, since it was hinted that his daughter was killed, and that's why he went crazy, Bill Mantlo did a story where he used his magnetic powers and fought back against the Nazis. So Chris Claremont doing it, saying, no, it's not that easy. We're not going to have Magneto just go use his powers and fight there. So he has a daughter. He's an adult. He's not going through puberty, but I guess because he was in Auschwitz, he's malnourished. But they were trying to hint with Bill Mantlo that he got his powers, and of course, he was able to do stuff. But then as things go wrong, his powers start to show themselves, and they decide they're going to burn down the house, but at the same time, he saves his wife. They didn't go get the girl at the same time for some strange reason, but he's going to go back, but he doesn't know how to use his powers. As the fire is coming through, it's like, hey, he's arrested for extortion and assault, and he's got to save his daughter, and she's literally on fire here, and they're beating the hell out of him. His powers won't turn on until he sees his daughter die. He reacts, and then she sees what he did to all these other people, not worried about their daughter. She's kind of like, hey, you're not human, so you become a monster. And Magda, and so this is changing it, so it gets you the very stilted way to do it. With the original, where Magneto just was mad with power, was way better, and it's kind of doing the Iceman origin yet again. So this is the first, well, it's not the full 12, but the first 12 issues. I think 11 was the one where I think it's Jean and Misty Knight together. I think that's what it was, and that was one of my favorites as far as the art, because it has Jean and Misty in bathing suits on the beach, and they're plenty hot, so it's kind of finally accepting that John Bolton is a pretty solid artist, right? So we'll end showing Magneto saving someone. So the Magneto stories, they say it's in his characterization for people to do something and then he reacts negatively, but that's kind of stilted. So that's as much as I can say. And there will be more retcons as you go along that would work its way into the period where Mark's with X-Men in what's that thing? X-Men in the Outback. A lot of these stories would factor right into the stories that were going on in the present day. So I guess that's about it. These retcons, in my mind, kind of changed all the X-Men characters. Not one of them escaped full-on retcons. And some were small, but a lot of stuff led to storylines that came later. Spinner Rack out.